Hello everyone. This is yet another video to discuss Women and Men report, Women and Men in India report of 2022. In the previous video, we discussed the first part of this report, and in this video, we are going to discuss the second part. As I mentioned in the previous video, that this, as you can see from the content list of this particular report, that this report is divided into two sections. If you see number 4, one is the statistical profile, which says that what is the position of women in different parameters and different indicators of growth, and we discussed that in the last video that I shared with you. In this video, we are going to discuss the point number 5, which is about sustainable development goals and gender. Now, I will repeat one more thing over here, that why this particular topic is important, because in your GS paper syllabus, of Indian society and social systems, you will see this second point, which is about role of women in women's organization. And to address any question on this particular topic, this report and the findings of this report is going to come very handy to you. So that's why we need to discuss this report, and let's see how are we going to go further on it. Just a minute. Okay. Let me take you to the original report, and then we are going to discuss the second part, which is the Sustainable Development Goals and gender. Before we go further on that, it is very important for you to know what are Sustainable Development Goals, because the understanding of Sustainable Development Goals are going to come very handy again to address many other questions. Why? We are going to know it now. So the Sustainable Development Goals are the blueprint of achieving a better and sustainable future for all. For all means it is at the global level. It is to be followed by most of the countries in the world. The United Nations General Assembly during its 70th session, and that happened on 25th September 2015, with the aim of taking forward the success of Millennium Development Goals, adopted these Sustainable Development Goals, which means that before this adoption of Sustainable Development Goals, what we had Millennium Development Goals. Now, a little bit of understanding about Millennium Development Goals. These were the development goals that were the 8 targets of United Nations. They were adopted when? In the year 2000, when we entered a new millennium. And all 189 United Nations member states, now 193 now, they said that they would try to help achieve these goals by 2015. So when they said they would try to achieve these 8 goals, which are listed here, by 2015. So from 2015 onwards, we shifted to our Sustainable Development Goals. Before that, we had Millennium Development Goals. We started with the beginning of our millennium. We have to keep this in mind. Now, what were those 8 Millennium Development Goals? Again, you can see there were 8 targets to be met. What were those? The first was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, that you can see over here. The second one was primary education to achieve universal. See, things are universal here. To achieve universal primary education, it was the second Millennium Development Goal. The third one was the gender equality. Fourth one was to reduce child mortality. If you see the previous video in which I discussed the statistics about gender equality or status of women and men, which is also about status of girl child and the male child, you will be able to connect dots with these targets as well. So the next one was to improve maternal health and In India, as per the report, the maternal health is improving, child mortality is going down. To combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, that was another target, and to ensure environmental sustainability. What remains important here for you to understand that now the idea of development is to have environmentally sustainable development. Okay, so wherever you are supporting, promoting any idea of development, in your answer, you have to highlight the ecological, environmental outcome of those development projects. And the last Millennium Development Goal was to develop global partnership of development. That we have to achieve these goals together. Now, this is about Millennium Development Goals, which were adopted in 2000, and they were supposed to be achieved by 2015. And then at 2015, what happened in 2015? By the General Assembly of United Nations, they adopted they adopted a document which was titled as Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which means that now we have entered another 15 years of target, and that we are supposed to meet with sustainable development goals. Now, what are those sustainable development goals? These sustainable development goals are 17 sustainable development goals, and I would like to show you these goals here. See, first one says no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities. Now you will say that, and then you have to understand while reading them how they're interconnected, because on fifth SDG, they are in the short form, they are called SDGs. The fifth SDG, which is Sustainable Development Goal, is gender equality. And the 10th one is reduce inequalities, which means here we are talking about more than gender aspect of inequality here. So that's how you have to develop those skills to think, when you read anything from multiple angles. Number 11 is sustainable cities and communities, how the cities are developing, whether they're developing in the sustainable manner or not, that you have to see. And then you have to come to number 12, responsible consumption and production, whether our consumption and production are also to support the idea of sustainability. Climate action is the 13th one, what kind of climate actions towards our climate we are taking. Life below water, life on land, and the 16th one is peace and justice, strong institutions. And the last one is partnership for the goals again, because the idea is that unless as nations we develop partnership to achieve these goals, we will be unable to achieve these goals. So these are the sustainable development goals that was, as I said, adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 2015, with the agenda to achieve these goals by 2030. Now, SDGs are, once we read it minutely, we'll also understand the philosophy behind it. They came into effect when, although they were adopted in 25th September 2015, they came into effect from 1st January, the new year of 2016. So you have to mark out this year with any memorable event in your life. In this year, sustainable development started with the new very first day of this year. So the Sustainable Development Goals are comprehensive list of global goals. These are global goals you have to remember. That means globally, all the countries are aspiring, they are determined, they are committed to achieve these goals, to have better and sustainable future for all. This is the agenda. Now, why this agenda is there? This agenda is to integrate social, economic, and environmental dimension of development. Why this has come into being? So till now, when we were thinking of development, we were thinking it beyond the social dimension of it and environmental dimension of it. Now, only the economic dimension was the focus. Now, our agenda has changed. The idea is now the development should focus, not only if we write development as this D, now the development should focus not only with economic aspect of it, it should also cover the social aspect of it, and it should definitely cover the environmental aspect of it. This is very, very important, because unless we cover the environmental aspect of development, it is not going to be sustainable. That is one thing you have to keep in mind. Now, as I said, they are universal for all nations. They are interconnected and indivisible. Hence, it necessitates the comprehensive and participatory approaches in bringing everybody together so that no one is left behind. These all goals that I showed you, they are very much interconnected with each other. Okay, they can't be achieved on standalone basis. You can't achieve gender equality if you do not talk about health. You can't achieve decent work and economic growth if you do not talk about quality education. So like that, you have to connect the dots over here. Now, one thing it is certainly you should know about it, that they are not legally binding on any nation. Nations are not legally bound to follow these SDGs, but in reality, de facto, you must have come across this word in polity also, de facto, in reality, international obligations and they have become international obligations and have potential to reorient domestic spending priorities of all countries up to 2030. Now, what is the meaning of that? The meaning of this is that if as India we are spending on different policies, on different kind of initiatives that we want to take for the upliftment of society, for the sake of development, we have to reorient those expenditure towards the achievement of the sustainable development goals. So countries are expected to take ownership and establish national framework in such a manner that it should achieve these goals. Now, what remains important for this particular report that we are discussing here is, what are we discussing? Women and Men in India report. What remains important over here is that whether these goals are achieved, whether these goals are have got ingrained into the idea of gender equality in India, or to achieve gender equality in India. So we have to see whether these goals have, they have reached somewhere or not. Now, what is the status of India here? So India is committed to implement SDG based on nationally defined indicator responding to national priorities and needs. In this effort towards integrating SDG, what is India doing now? It is now integrating SDG into countries' ongoing national and subnational policies and programs at the national level. And how it has been done? NITI Aayog has mapped the SDG with centrally sponsored programs of different ministry and department. Now, all different central ministries and department, they are sponsoring different kind of programs. While sponsoring, they are keeping one thing in mind. What are we moving towards the idea of sustainable development through this policy program initiative of so and so ministry or so and so department or not. Okay, so the integrated nature of 2030 agenda require government to work across policy silos. So policies are not, developed and implemented in silos and set ambitious and interrelated economic, social, and environmental objectives that go beyond the short-term political cycle. You have to now look at the long-term effect of the policies that you make. And when you see the long-term effect, it necessarily takes care of the sustainable development. Now, let me take you to some of the gender aspect of these sustainable development goal. If you see the list of sustainable development goal, you have to keep one thing in mind, and that is that fifth goal is talking about gender equality. Okay, if you remember this fact, that it is the fifth sustainable development goal which is talking about gender equality, that is going to be very useful while answering, as I said, many questions on women empowerment and achieving the gender equality in the long-term perspective in the Indian context. Now, how it has been planned to achieve this SDG, SDG number 5, to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls in India. Okay. Now, in India, what this and this SDG is, India has adopted this philosophy of SDG 5, that it aims to ensure ending all forms of discrimination. So, idea of gender and the understanding of gender, when you talk about empowerment of women, you have to understand that it has to be seen in the context of discrimination, and that's why we talk about empowerment. It has to be seen in the context of underprivileged section of society, and that is why we talk about empowerment. Okay, so this SDG aims to end all of that. So how do we do that? To do that, it recognizes that it is vital to give women equal rights on land and property. How do we, uplift their status in the society? By making them, holder of some land, ownership of some land and property. Definitely, when you're talking about health in the context of women, it has to be sexual and reproductive health as well. Another important aspect is to participate into the labor force in the contemporary times. It is very important that women are have the accessibility, and they have they can access technology and internet at the smoother pace. Because if the digital divide remains on gender lines, and the technology and internet, the access to internet remains limited for women, it will have a very remarkable impact on their education and subsequently on their participation into the labor force. So we have to keep that in mind. So providing now outcome of these would be further extrapolated to providing them with equal access to education, healthcare, decent work, and representation in political and economic decision making. And then if you see the previous video, that talks about our that talks about that how on these parameters the status of women stand now. So to have understanding of that, I will encourage you to see the previous video of this series. And now I'll show you that that's how there are following 9 targets under SDG 5 to monitor gender equality and ensure an empowerment of women and girls in India. Now, what are those 9 targets under SDG 5 that is supposed to be followed? As I said, first of all, and you keep that in mind, that first of all, you have to see that all forms of discrimination are ending over here. You are aiming to end all form of discrimination. And why I'm repeating it again, that, once you register these indicators, I'm 100% sure that you will be able to answer the questions on women empowerment, which holds a very important section of your paper over here. So that is why you have to keep these indicators. You have to just remember these indicators like on your fingertips. So discrimination of all kinds should end. Next is, you have to eliminate all forms of violence against women in public and private sphere. And how, I mean, one of the indicator you can say, or one of the reason you can highlight as trafficking and sexual violence and exploitation and so on and so forth. Now, target number 5.3, which is the third target under SDG 5, is to eliminate all harmful practices like child marriage. Marriage as an institution should do away with the practice of child marriage, because that has a direct impact on women's health, maternal mortality rate, child mortality rate, and health in the long term for women. Now, again, you have to recognize their contribution into the labor force. For that, you also need to recognize a very important point is 5.4 is value the unpaid care work that women do in their domestic space. And also, in the long term, government, should promote the agenda of shared responsibilities within household and the family as a nationally appropriate. That, household is not only the woman's domain to be to take care of, but also it's a collective responsibility. And if it is promoted like that, then the collective responsibility of women, by including women into the labor force participation, can be achieved. Now, next is 5.6. It is to ensure universal access to, as I said, sexual and reproductive health for women. And next, 5.8 is to undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources. How economic resources are to be seen over here? Ownership. Their ownership and control over land and other form of property. How much property is owned by women or in the society? That inheritance. So that's how you see, how gradually the upliftment and empowerment will happen. Next is enhance the use of enabling technology. As I said, unless you make them technology savvy, then information communication technology usage is told to them. That is going to contribute remarkably on the education, higher education aspects of women, as well as the labor force participation of women. And then comes 5.C, which is adopt and strengthen sound policy and enforceable legislation for the promotion of gender equality and empowerment of all women and right at all levels. Now, these a total of 14 indicators have been identified at global level to monitor the progress of these targets, whereas at the national level, total 29 indicators have been identified. Now, if you see these development goals, which I marked you here, UN has also come up with the analysis that how these different goals are gender sensitive or sparsely gender. You can see it over here. Either they're gender sensitive, gender sparse, and gender blind. And if you see this particular graph, it says, as you can see, goal number 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 16. To a certain extent, 11. They look gender sensitive because they have a larger section of number of gender specific indicators. Okay, so these one are going to be gender sensitive, because their indicators include gender. And these are the ones where the gender indicators are comparatively lesser. So they are sparsely, gendered. And then if you see the rest of it, they are gender blind. There you do not find any kind of any indicators which are gender specific indicators. Now, going further on that, what do you see as the overall understanding of how these indicators to match gender equality with the sustainable development goals? There are 5 broad themes: economic empowerment, education, health related services, and decision making. Other is human rights of women and girl children. Now, if you see the previous video of related to this particular report, that will tell you that in terms of education, the situation looks better. It's going upward. In terms of health, the situation looks better. I'm talking about the Indian context here. But in terms of economic empowerment, as far as the labor force participation is concerned, the graph is not going upward much. It is just hovering downward only, or it's not moving upward. And decision making position, women at the leadership position also, this graph is also not moving up significantly. The presence of women in the decision making position of India is still very bleak. So I would request you to see these 2 videos in series, and it will tell you that first of all how this particular report talks about status of women in India. And the second part will tell you, once you see those indicators, how they are contributing into the our Indian achievement of sustainable development goals. And if you connect dots in these 2 things, the indicators, the statistics that have come forward and their role into achieving sustainable development goals, then you will also develop a skill of connecting dots of various indicators to answer many questions. I will come up with another such video where we are going to talk about yet another social issues pertaining to India. And till then, I will take your leave. Okay, bye-bye.